Hi, I'm back with Orphans Chapter 24. Pia. The rattle like continuing. The rattle sounded like sleigh bells at Christmas time. She looked at the bottom of the handle. The wood was rough and warm, as if it had been rubbed against something hard, but she could still make out the blurred raiments of the single initial M. She gasped and dropped the rattle, just missing Cooper's head. It was Mac's rattle, but where did it come from? And how did it get here? She started out the nursery, trembling and trying to stay upright. She had to ask Mrs. Hudson where it had come from. Then she stopped and went back to the crib. Cooper needed to come too. She couldn't just leave him there, but she had to hurry. She had to know where the rattle came from before her heart burst from her chest. She reached in the baby's. She reached in for the baby with shaking arms, then paused and rested her hands on the crib rattling. As she lost her mind, there had to be hundreds of homemade rattles and even more babies with the initial M. Maybe it was Cooper's rattle. Maybe his real name started with an M. Maybe Nurse Wallace had given it to Mrs. Hudson and Mr. Hudson. Finally felt finally felt comfortable giving it to him. She took a deep breath and tried to think clearly. Just because the rattle had an M on the bottom didn't mean it was Max. He could be a it could be a coincidence. She picked it up and looked at the handle again, rolling it between her thumbs and fingers. The M turned into a W. It could have been either one, and yet the similarities between this rattle and her brothers was unnerving. Just then, Cooper started to fuss, breaking her chariots. She set down the rattle, picking him up, and took him over to the dressing table. She was going to ask Mrs. Hudson about the rattle, but it couldn't wait a few minutes. But it could wait a few minutes. Cooper grinned up at her as she took off his nightclothes and changed his diaper. She smiled medically down at him and tickled his warm neck with gentle fingers, her mind elsewhere. Are you a happy boy today? She said. I think you're. He rubbed his small fist across his mouth, trying to suck on his knuckles. Forcing herself to concentrate on the task at hand, she finished changing him, got him dressed, then went back downstairs. In the kitchen, Miss Hudson was at the sink washing dishes. Rebecca bent over a tub of steaming water next to the stove, sweat dripping from her red face. When she saw Pia and Cooper, she dropped a wet sheet on the floor and rushed over to get a closer look. Oh my word, she guessed. Would you look at him? He's so handsome. He reminds me of my little son, Simon, and he's not even crying. She clasped her hands together under her chin. I always adore babies. Now I hold him for a moment. Ignoring the feeling that she might scream before she found out about the rattle, Pia regarded Mrs. Hudson with a question on her face. Did she want to let Rebecca hold Cooper? Mrs. Hudson shook her head slightly, wiped her hands on the dish towel, and started towards them. Rebecca, she said, I hired you to do the laundry, not play with the children. If there's time work, after your work is finished, you can spend a few minutes with Pia and the children then, and you might do well to remember that this is your first time and must I allow anyone in my home. I'm sure you'll understand why my husband, myself, and Pia are the only ones allowed to hold Cooper right now. Rebecca dropped her arms, her hands slapping against her wet apron. Yes, ma'am, she said, clearly disappointed, and went back at the steaming washboard. Pia gave Cooper to Mrs. Hudson. He changed and he's clean. Thank you, Pia, Mrs. Hudson said. She kissed Cooper's forehead. Good morning, my beautiful boy. Then to Pia, I'll feed him in the other room. Would you keep an eye on things for a few minutes? Of course, Pia said. More than anything, she wanted to ask about the rattle, but Cooper was hungry. It would have to wait. While Mrs. Hudson fed Cooper, Pia sat with the girls to make sure they ate their breakfast without squabbling or getting food on their fresh clothes, her legs bouncing up and down beneath the table. Rebecca kept busy scrubbing clothes and diapers on a metal swashboard every once in a while, giving Pia and the girls a friendly smile. If nothing else, she was a hard worker, and even though Pia had looked forward to having someone else to talk to, right now she was relieved Rebecca wasn't trying to start a conversation. She was too occupied to chat with anybody. let alone a stranger. And I'll be back with the continuation up here.